Greetings once again, Descendants. So the purpose of this video will be going over all these numbers. Now you might think that they're self-explanatory. A lot of these numbers contribute to a damage that you think is calculated. I am of course talking about DPS. As you can see, this weapon's DPS is 170. I acquired this weapon and the other weapons that you can buy from the guy at level 1, no mods, no random rolls. So there's nothing outside of normal things that could affect these values. So according to this guns, it does 170 damage per second. However, it does not do 170 damage per second. If we go and we interact with the laboratory controller and we spawn Legion of Immortalities level 1s. The level 1s have no resistances, so they don't have to mess with my damage formula. It does in fact do 84 damage. Except on a weak point, which for anyone that doesn't know is a yellow number, a crit is an orange number, and you can crit a weak point. This is why the numbers in this game differ so much. Moving on. This will be a separate video later. So if we have a firearm attack of 84, which is the damage the bullet does, a fire rate of 180, a rounds per magazine of 18, and a reload time of 2.24. Not taking into account the firearm critical hit rate and damage, we should actually be getting a different number than 170. Now you might be saying that there's other factors to consider. Whether there are other factors to consider or not, this number from this particular gun is not 170. Why do you care about the formula I'm about to show you? Because most people gauge their damage based off of this formula. So if you see a DPS number on a gun, don't take it as that's the damage that you're gonna do. I'm going to be doing a lot of weapon testing in the future with this game, and I'll release an actual tier list based off of real numbers so that no one else has to do what I'm about to have to do with all this math. If you are in the math field, you know how much work I'm about to have to do with all these freaking guns. Thank you, First Descendant, for making me do this math myself. So these are the numbers that should make up the damage from your gun. I'll go over how to calculate the actual damage of the gun. I have in fact tested all of these numbers beforehand. They are correct. So the fire rate of the gun is in fact 180 rounds per minute. So first, since our number is in fact damage per second, we want to first calculate the bullets per second. So 180 bullets divided by 60 seconds per minute gives us 3 bullets per second. Now we have 18 bullets in a magazine. So 18 divided by 3 is 6 seconds. Why this number is important is cycle time, which we'll go over later. So then we add our reload time, 2.24, which gives us a total cycle of 8.24. Every cycle of the gun takes 8.24 seconds. In that 8.24 seconds, we have fired 18 rounds. So 18 rounds times 84 is our cycle damage, which gives us 1512. So now since our cycle time is 8.24 seconds, we need to take 8.24 and we need to see how many times it goes into 1512. And we get 189.49. Damn. This number is the actual DPS of our weapon. The 170 that the game is showing you is in fact not the right number. I don't know if this is a bug. I don't know if they messed up the formula. I don't know if they had the right formula at one point and made changes to the damage. There's a lot of other misconsistencies with the damage calculation inside of the game. So now we're going to do the crit damage, which by the way, I messed up on my last video. I said to multiply the crit damage 1.3 times 0.1 when you should have multiplied 0.3.1 because 1.3 is 130% crit chance. Dodo. However, the formula that I put on the board was correctly. I just did the math wrong. So now we take 189.49 is our actual DPS. Then we take our crit rate, 5%, which is 0.05, damage bonus, which is 20%, and we multiply it by 0.5, which is sadly only 1% extra damage. This number does go up very fast, the more multiplicative you can make both of these numbers. So if you're trying to build for critical hit and critical hit damage, you want to build for both numbers. But if you can get this to 100%, this just becomes a multiplier on your damage. So you can strive for that without additional buffs from other party members. I don't actually think this number is reasonably possible, but we have a 1.01 multiplier upon our DPS. So our final DPS damage of this gun is 191, not 170. So first we take our rounds per minute, which is 624, divided by 60 seconds a minute, gives us 10.4 rounds per second. Our magazine is 109. 10.48 seconds to empty the magazine. Then we add our reload time, which is 2.6, giving us a cycle time of 13.08 seconds. Now to calculate the damage of the magazine, 109 multiplied by 17,631. So this gives us 1.921779 million damage per magazine, which we then take and we divide our cycle time, which is 13.08, and that gives us 146,000 damage per second. Our firearm crit rate is 10%, easy. Critical hit damage is 0.6 addition. So 10% of the time we are dealing 160% of the damage. So to calculate the actual damage modifier of our DPS, we would need to take 0.6 and then multiply it times 0.1, which gives us 0.06. So 146,000 times 1.06, because the 6 is a modifier, gives us 155,700, and that was on this 152,000 DPS tamer. Now, you might be saying, that's close enough. Now, why is this important? Although this number is only about 5% off on a machine gun, the slower your weapon fires, the more damage will be off. It is very off on sniper rifles, it is very off on handguns, it is very, very off on rocket launchers, and I have tested this very thoroughly. So what I plan to do is I plan to make a spreadsheet later with all of the popular weapons and how much they are off. I hope to create a rate formula on how much the gun is off on its actual damage. That way it's easier to tell how much damage your gun is doing, so you can better pick which guns you want. The damage is extremely off on slower firing weapons like sniper rifles. This difference in between what your number actually is and how much the game tells you it is will grow a lot the more mods that are put on the gun. The most important damage mod for any gun is firearm attack if you're aiming for damage. The second most important mod on every firearm that isn't a slow firing weapon like a sniper rifle is going to be fire rate. Now, the reason I say fire rate isn't that important on a sniper rifle, your cycle time is just going to benefit from fire rate less. Also, you typically want your heavy weapon only in certain times of the battle. But on machine guns, auto rifles, tactical rifles, fire rate's very important. When it comes to critical hit rate and critical hit damage, you typically want to go in between both of them. What I mean by that is it's better to have 50% critical hit rate and 50% critical hit damage than it is to have 100% critical hit rate and 20% critical hit damage. This is just how multiplication works, as most people know. You gotta hit more of that firearm attack. These elemental mods are direct modifiers to the end of your damage formula. So whatever your DPS ends up being, multiply it by 1 point, whatever the modifier is. Here it says fire attack 15%. Multiply it by 1.15 to increase the damage by 15%. It is important to note that this is another number that does not appear in your DPS modifier. Specifically on the Tamer, I don't run weak point modifiers. Since my firearm critical hit rate is at 11.37% for a 2.16 multiplier, it would behoove me the most to increase my firearm critical hit rate. Although I am out of Kyber, I do believe Inside Focus will in fact be the best one for the build. I do believe that this is the strongest I can make this build without pouring crystallization catalysts inside of it and trying to get better reload time. Now, once I max out my critical hit rate, my critical hit damage, my fire rate, and my attack increase, the only thing left is additional damage, like fire enhancement, is increasing my magazine and increasing my reload time, so I can decrease the cycle modifier and increase the amount of damage. So I have gotten my Tamer up to 398,000 DPS. However, this number differs tremendously from what it actually is. Now I'll actually go over what all these numbers mean. Firearm attack is the amount of damage that a bullet does. So one bullet will do 19,411.73 damage. Fire rate is the rounds per minute that your gun fires. Rounds per magazine is the rounds per magazine. Reload time is the reload time. Critical hit rate is the percentage chance that your weapon does critical hit damage, which is a multiplier on your critical hit. When I shoot a bullet, all of the damage of the bullet will be multiplied by 216%. Crush is, so the weak point type of Stunning Beauty is Crush. These are the types and the weaknesses therefore. Whenever you have a weapon that matches the weakness of anything, it does that additional damage. If it doesn't match the weakness, it doesn't do less damage. It just doesn't get the 10% multiplier. If this weapon had a chance to inflict an attribute upon an enemy, it would be at a 14.29% chance to do so. So this weapon, the Restored Relic, has a 33.33 chance to poison an enemy. Weak point damage indicates the amount of modifier that you will deal whenever you hit a weak point. And weak points can in fact be seen through your archive. The glowing blue options are weak points. So if you're fighting a void intercept battle and you can't figure out where to shoot them, aim for the weak points. Hipfire accuracy is the amount of accuracy when you're not aiming down sights. Aimed shot accuracy is obviously aiming down sights. So drop off is a little different. Here is your drop off range chart. Let me move myself over here. So the effective drop off starts at 35 meters. So at 35 meters, your damage starts dropping off. 65 meters is when your drop off stops happening. So anything beyond 65 meters will still get hit. But after 65 meters, they will get a 0.6 negative modifier to the damage. So your damage will be decreased by 60%. Your maximum range is 150 meters. Anything beyond 150 meters, you cannot deal damage to. Movement speed is the movement speed while you have the weapon mounted. Weapon mounting can be seen through other options like reactors. To mount a weapon, you have to be holding the weapon. Currently, Valby is mounting the Tamer. So the movement speed while the Tamer is equipped is 350. In general, the smaller the weapon is, the faster your movement speed will be. This is your movement speed while firing, and this is your movement speed while aiming down sights. This is why hip fire in this game actually matters, because it alters your movement speed. And then you have your sprint. Some weapons are going to have specific highlighted sections, but the highlighted sections, honestly, are very self-explanatory. Check out my channel if you like how I do content. Consider subscribing. I'll do defense next. Peace out. Enjoy your day or your night.